Okay, you guys. Hi. Hello. I know I haven't done a Hunter Killer Live in forever. We have 3 boxes to solve still, which this is box 4, then we have 5, and then 6 will be the final box for this storyline. And I'm so behind. I'm so sorry, you guys. The holidays took it out of me, and then I got sick, and I just now feel like my voice is good enough that I can like talk forever because there's so much reading involved in this. I was like, better wait till I'm better to do a live. So here we are, finally doing it. I'm trying to get all this stuff out of this envelope. Okay. She's struggling, y'all. She's struggling. All right, so I know it has been forever since we've done one of these. So just to recap everyone on what is going on, because there's a lot. It's a lot to unpack here. Mom reached out to us because her son had went missing in the lovely little town of Burkittsville, which is known for the Blair Witch. Ooh. And they found out that the son had, or we found out, I should say, he had been hiding out in the basement of the History Museum. And one of his dad, who died mysteriously in the woods while a logging accident happened, allegedly, one of his friends is actually one of the guys that like runs the museum, and he heard stuff moving around down there but didn't investigate. He just assumed he was crazy, which I made fun of at the time. But then we later found out that he has been seeing like an apparition or something, and one time it was in the basement and it was trying to like charge him up the stairs, so he threw a book at it, which I also laughed at. But also when he went back to investigate later after he like, you know, calmed down, probably did some shots. I wouldn't blame him at all. Please. I would do it. Um, he saw like there's like this code that keeps popping up, and when we like decipher the code, it actually said I'm not done yet or something like that. It was like I'm not finished. Something like, yeah, I'm not finished. And so creepy. So creepy. So then they also found a like note that her son had written, but like someone else was talking to him in the same code, and they found out that the name of the guy was Carver, which they have kids go missing all the time in Burkittsville. It's a normal thing, and they just blame it on the witch. But one of the things that they noticed when they're looking through the woods for these lost kids that the witch has allegedly stolen was that there are all these like symbols carved into the trees, and so they like dubbed whoever's doing the carving Carver. So that's who allegedly like lured her son into the woods under the pretense that he was going to connect him with his dead father. Isn't that charming? And listen, guys, there's a lot going on here. Um, so they launch a search party to try and find her son after all these like new clues came up that he like went into the woods with Carver. And they like went into like I think it was like 4 different groups, and each group had like their own like things happen. One actually found some more clues, and they found out that like he was trying to leave Carver because he wanted him to do something horrible, and he was afraid that like he wouldn't be able to stop himself from doing it. Like Carver would like hypnotize him or somehow like mind control him into doing the horrible thing. And we found out that the horrible thing was he wanted his little brother. Yeah. So all the other groups had like weird like kind of like time things going on. Like they heard like a woman screaming, so they tried to find her, and like they got off of their path and ended up on the path of another group that was like on the other side of the woods from them. Weird stuff going on. One of them stopped for lunch and then, you know, like went on for a few more hours till it was like about 4 o'clock, and then they started making their way back to the museum. And when they got back to the museum, when they got out of the woods, it was only like 11 o'clock. And they're like, no, it wasn't. Like weird stuff going on. And then once we found out that like he wanted Liam, the son that went missing, to basically kidnap his own brother and bring him to Carver, who I'm assuming Carver's going to take him to the witch for some reason, you know. I had a voice memo from the mom, and you hear her panicking, which hurt my heart. But And a very panicked, like she's like driving home to like find her son, and when she gets there, he's not there. That's where it left off. Super creepy, super crazy, but like neither of her sons were there. So he still has Liam, but now he has the little brother as well, which is crazy. So we're gonna, and he's been like taunting the mom as well, like leaving like taunting messages for her. Carver has. So nuts. Pardon me. Okay, well, I thought I could get through this. We're gonna try. I'm gonna try. We're gonna push through. Okay. Ooh, you guys. Okay. So here is the note for what we have to solve for this box. Let's see what's going on. Hello, Carver left me another message a few nights ago. He left a note right on my front doorstep. Of all the sick, invasive, downright evil things to do, hasn't this SOB done enough to me? When will I have suffered enough? When I think about him slithering around out in the woods, looking at my house from the tree line and peering into my windows, my head gets light and I get so nauseated that I feel as though I might be dying. I can't sleep at all anymore. Every night I just sit up on the porch or in Tristan's bed with Hud's old shotgun in my lap until the sun finally rises. Sometimes I hear a noise in the night and run toward it, finally ready to pull the trigger on this lunatic, but it's only ever the wind. I haven't shown Lanning, that's the sheriff that didn't want to investigate further. I haven't shown Lanning Carver's message. It'll just get sent off to some lab where it'll gather dust on a shelf for months, if not years. Even if it gets fast-tracked, what good will it do? The sheriff's office already knows where he is, and they're still not finding him. The force is too huge and confusing for them to handle. It's time to take this completely into my own hands, like I should have from the beginning. There's no point in spending another second in this house or this town. My sons aren't here. They're in that forest. Carver's only gotten cockier over these past few months. At this point, he wants me to come out and find him. Something in that note has to give us some sort of context as to where he's hiding. Luckily, even if the lead is obscure, we've got a bona fide expert on the Black Hills Forest on our side. I believe that is the guy from the museum. It took a while to convince Anthony, the guy from the museum, to help me collect what we need. He kept trying to talk me down at first. Eventually, I had to grab him by the shoulders, look him dead in the eyes, and tell him that there's already one man standing between my sons, and that one man is already one too many, and that, friendship or no, I'm prepared to bring that number to 0 by any means necessary. That finally convinced him to relent. Ooh, boss babe. Anthony gathered most of what I'm sending you from the museum attic. He said that since the forest is so dangerous, my best chance of making a successful journey out there is to study the accounts of people who made trips deep into the woods and lived to tell the tale. You'll need to cross-reference the map with the historical accounts Anthony has given us and find the location of Carver's hiding place. When you figure it out, send me the correct map coordinates on the tip line at kentcase.com. The new password is Echo12. Even though I'm going to be totally alone out there, I have faith that the help I get from the outside is going to see me through. Okay, so we have to find his hiding place. Creepy. Apologize for the coughing, guys. I'm so sorry. All right. So we have a dirty old note here, which has some more code here at the bottom. So I'm probably going to have to do a part 2 on this just to tell you guys what the code is because I can never figure it out. I have to look it up online. Rosemary, the boys keep calling out into the woods for you, and you never answer them. You've really been letting them down over these past few months, haven't you? The jerk! In fact, you've been letting them down for their entire lives. Never able to protect them, to comfort them, to realize the depth of their pain. At least now you'll never be able to fail them again either. What an ass. I'm just saying, oh my gosh. I would never. Remember when you would play hide and seek with Liam when he was little? How he would always hide in the roots of that gnarled old tree at the very edge of the forest? I'd watch from the tree line, seeing you pretend to search everywhere, even though he was always hid in the same place. That's a good mom. What? I'm sure you wish it was that easy now, but this game is going to be fair measure more challenging. You're not going to be able to just waltz into the woods and stumble upon the light of my campfire. That's not what she wants. She wants you to suffer, and so do I. So creepy. But if you're smart enough, maybe you'll be able to find your way to your sons. Maybe you'll even get a glimpse of dear old Hud. That's her husband, okay? Oh, and in case you haven't figured it out yet, there's a reason that your search parties have failed to find me for so long. Sunlight conceals the truth of the forest. I see the light of my fire, you'll have to enter after dark. Oh, to see the light of my fire, you'll have to enter after dark. I need to tell you to come by yourself. I don't need to tell you to come by yourself. I already know you will. And then there's special code. Now, where's my flashlight? Because there's always like hidden messages in these things. Can I find my flashlight without like half of this table falling off? That's the real question. Okay. We've got it. Doesn't look like there's any hidden code on this, just the regular code that was on there. Okay. So, what a creeper. Been watching them since they were like little babies. That's so, no ma'am. Okay. Are there any hidden messages on this? Nope, I don't think so. Interesting. Okay. Let's see what this is. Okay, it's a note from Anthony. Investigators, since Rosemary is truly hell-bent on doing this, and you're the one who's managed to help her get this far already, I'm going to do everything in my power to arm the both of you with as much information as possible. I collected a few things I think will help you navigate the forest. 3 historical documents, a map, a magnifying glass, and a compass. The 3 historical documents have each been taken from the museum's archives. I'm including them because they each convey the experience of someone who spent a prolonged period of time in the forest and came out more or less intact. I hope they'll provide some guidance on how to get your bearings in the woods and how to navigate between 3 of its major landmarks, in particular once you do. I imagine the map and its accompanying instruments will be useful on that front as well. As far as I'm aware, the map itself is the most geographically accurate account of the forest to date. That's including satellite imagery. A digital imaging of the area has always proven to be a challenge. Ugh. Sorry, guys. There's actually a very interesting history behind the map and the man who made it. Emmanuel Ramos was a renowned surveyor and cartographer who was hired by a now defunct sawmill to chart out the area in 1953. After a number of the facility's employees began to complain that none of the maps in the area were accurate. As the story goes, Ramos became obsessed with the forest during that period. When he turned in the map, he told sawmill officials that traditional directions don't work in the forest, and that instead travelers had to be move according to the cues that the land itself gives them. He said he considered the cues to be cardinal. That strikes me as a melodramatic way to describe the cartographic process, but I suppose that he had earned the right at that point, seeing as he had successfully charted a region that had confounded his colleagues for centuries. The record on Ramos gets a little hazy after that. He completely fell off the map, so to speak. Haha. Map joke. Within a year of completing the project, the compass and magnifying glass I'm passing on to you belong to Ramos as well. Maybe using them will help you see the force the same way he did. All right. I admit that I'm rambling on about obscure historical facts so I don't have to put my feelings into words. Detective, I want you to know that Rosemary is the strongest person I've ever met. She's managed to stand so tall for so long in the face of such unbelievable loss. But at the end of the day, she's only human, and the forces she's going up against aren't. Please do the best you can to see her through this. Aw, he cares. Oh my gosh, I may have to go get a cough drop. Okay, so we have a drawing of a building. It says She wants me to build over here. And then there's a window in the attic. Stick built over here, and then stone foundation at the bottom. She told me the spot. Plaster interior, cement exterior. She needs a basement. She expects company soon. Oh, that's so creepy. Okay, and then there's a whole list of stuff in here. Okay, no secret messages. Mr. Kip, a fellow stopped by the store as I was closing up just now. Damn near gave me a heart attack since I could have sworn that I'd already locked the front door. It was that guy who's been living out in the woods. Can't for the life of me remember his name, even though I swear that he introduced himself to me. He bought supplies, nails, shingles, things like that. Said that his place was damn near falling apart. Drew me a picture and made some notes so that I could get an idea of the scope of the project. Said he might come tomorrow morning for more supplies. Wanted to give you a heads up about it in case you're the only one in, because frankly, he doesn't seem to be entirely right in the head. He was caked in dirt, and there were all manner of rotting leaves and pieces of sticks tangled in his beard, and he kept trailing off in the middle of his sentences. But surprisingly, he had enough money, and with the way business has been lately, I could hardly turn a customer away. P.S. Where'd all the scrap paper that we usually keep under the counter go? I went to look for something to write on, but this drawing was the only paper I had on hand. That's from Ned. Okay, here's a note from Arthur. This is an architectural drawing, complete with a series of handwritten notes that's been on file at the museum ever since Kip's Hardware Depot collapsed in the mid-1940s due to a devastating infestation of parasites and mold that the original owners couldn't afford to repair. The lot stood empty until Mike and Bob's convenience store was built in 1951. It pains me to part with this piece of local history, but I don't think that anybody at the museum besides me will even notice its absence, and I know that you're going to put it to good use. Interesting. Okay, Mr. Kip, you're not going to believe this. Just now, I was closing down the store when I heard a dull scratching sound coming from the wall behind the register. Remember last spring when the rats got in the walls? This place sounds like it's really well maintained. It sounded like that, so I headed to the basement to get the traps. I was only away for a few seconds, but when I came back upstairs, the hermit was in the store again. He was scraping something along the wall with a rusty old knife. I hollered him to cut it out. He stopped, but he didn't even apologize. Just turned around and demanded that I sell him a shovel because she needed his basement to be deeper. Can't believe a guy like that managed to land himself a wife. I had him pay extra on account of the damage he did to the wall. Looks like he carved a bunch of stick figures. Would you mind painting over those when you get the chance? I'd do it myself right now, but it's late. And frankly, I've got a pretty bad case of the heebie-jeebies just looking at things right now. I like Ned. Okay. Mr. Kip, guess I can just use this sheet as a running log of hermit updates. He visited again towards closing today, said he needed an extra pair of hands to help him with the project because it needed to be done fast. Offered me a good amount of money to help him out on my day off from the store tomorrow. And I said yes. Thought I'd let you know just in case, and don't worry, I'll be bringing my hunting knife just in case he's really as off his rocker as people around town say. Okay. This one has like a bunch of arrows pointing around the note. Mr. Kip, I know it's my day off, but I stopped by to tell you to ban that hermit from the store. Guess you're out on your lunch break, but listen, the man's a menace. I met him on the edge of the forest at sunrise today to walk up to his house. We started on the path to the lumber mill, but soon veered off from the path entirely. We walked in one direction for what I would judge to be 5 hours. As we walked, the hermit would occasionally mutter under his breath to himself like he'd completely forgotten that I was there at all. I could barely hear what he was saying, but I thought that I could make out something about heading toward the horde of bones. Ugh. We eventually reached a stream, and when we did, it was like he suddenly remembered that I existed again. He turned to me and said, turned to me and he started talking about how there's a part of the forest where she pinned the shadow in place with pine needles, and that he made sure to build his place as far away from them as he could. He said that his cabin was another 3 hours down the river, away from the still shadows. He told me that I should count myself lucky that I wouldn't have to see those shadows just yet. Maybe it's just because I was spooked, but in the moment, it sure as heck sounded like a threat. I made some excuse about forgetting that my mom wanted me home by lunch and said that I couldn't help him out with his repairs after all. Then I all but ran back to town. I just thought you should know that I'm not going to be serving him anymore. If he comes into the store again, I'm just going to hide out in the basement until I hear him leave. I know that's not very professional, but that's the only thing I think I'll be able to do if I see him again. And that's God honest truth. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Kip. I really hope Ned is didn't get killed or something. I like Ned. Man, I would be in the same boat. I'm just saying. That's creepy. You don't have to see the shadows just yet. No, I don't want to see them at all. Okay, so now we've got some journal entries. Interesting. I've scanned a few original pages of a young man named Aloysius Masters for you. Mr. Masters was a member of the search party that combed through the forest for a number of days in the late 19th century, making several valuable, though largely unconfirmed and inexplicable observations along the way. Masters' journals were passed down through his family for years before being donated to the museum by a great-great-granddaughter who was moving out of town and didn't want to carry much of the past with her. Hopefully her loss will be your gain. March 14th, 1886. Wow, this is like back in the day. Back in town now. Spent the day out in the forest once again. Traveled several hours past the bone white rock where we ended on our search yesterday, but still to no avail. We 14 able-bodied men, volunteers from about town who know the area and its peculiarities, have not been able to find any sign that another human being has even been in these woods at all. It was tragic, yet not unsurprising, when that young girl became lost in the woods. It still disturbs me that the utmost degree, however, to think that the first group of men sent to search for her should disappear as well. We, the 14 members of the second search party, count our friends and brothers and sons amongst the lost and have found neither hair nor hide of them, and not of the girl herself for 2 days now. The only discovery of note thus far was that of a puddle of some vicious, no, trying to make out the word. It's like in very tight cursive. Anyway, the puddle of a substance that none of us could rightly identify, which one man nearly lost a boot to when he accidentally stumbled into it. Though I do not put much stock in the ghost stories used to frighten children in these parts, I still became deeply unsettled when I set foot into the forest. I feel as though a weight has been pressed upon my shoulders and a pair of eyes has focused on the back of my neck. We will take up the search once again on sunrise. I hope that tomorrow's effort brings us greater success. March 15th, 1886. Mr. Robertson, who misjudged a step into that strange puddle, returned this morning with a pair of borrowed boots. He complained that even though he had hung his boots above the fire all night, they continued to be soaked with a strange substance he stepped into. Ew! Near the end of the day's search, a member of our party called upon us to report that he had found a human tooth embedded into the gnarled stump of a white tree when he had attempted to sit down to rest upon it. The men wanted almost almost an hour of daylight debating almost an hour of daylight debating the tooth, half insisting it was indeed human, while half swore it appeared to belong to an animal. One young man named Thomas Gillard was frightened beyond belief by it, trembling like a leaf in a gale as he insisted that the witch had set her gaze upon us. I stayed silent as I did not know what I believed. We found nothing else of note, and when we returned to town, it was with heavy hearts and slumped shoulders especially once we spied curious children and wistful wives watching us return utterly empty-handed. We all went to our homes, shaken and shamed. I am certain I will not be the only man tonight praying for some sign of missing men. March 16th. Oh, this is a long one. Thomas Gillard refused to return to the woods today. When the 13 of us came to collect him, we found that he had barred his doors and hung a cross in his window, and he refused to speak to any of us. We embarked without him. Though we encountered neither monsters nor witches, strange events did occur during today's search. While I am by no means ready to join Mr. Gillard in his beliefs concerning witchcraft, I feel I must describe the day's events to assist our own understanding. We began our day much the same as we always had, by spreading out in a formation intended to cover as much ground as possible. We felt perhaps 40 feet between each man to properly sight any potential clues. I can recall with absolute clarity Mr. Josiah Johnson, our party's leader, standing to my direct left. We came upon the large white rock once again, and we were about to set out from the stone when I noticed a faint sound. I listened closely to locate the source of the sound, and though it eluded me, it soon became apparent that the sound itself was that of a man calling for help. I turned to my left to alert Josiah, but saw another man instead. Mr. Johnson was now standing to my right, although I had not once veered from my course, nor had I seen another man cross my path. When I attempted to alert Mr. Johnson and the others of the noise, no other man seemed to be able to hear it, though it was only increasing in volume and in desperation. Despite this, the men swore to me that the forest was silent as the grave. It was then I began to hear the voice screaming out my name. I insisted that we follow it. Bad idea. Bad idea. I must have seemed either quite sincere or quite desperate, because Mr. Johnson agreed to break from our planned course. From where we stood at the large white rock, we followed the stream toward the sound I heard. Almost as soon as we changed course, we came across a pile of dead rodents, 10 or more. They appeared to have died fighting one another, as their flesh was torn to shreds. Gross. We walked 2 hours in that same direction, the smell of their rot seeming to linger with us long after we passed them. I would be gone. Nope. Then, as we neared a fork in the stream, we sighted a wisp of smoke in the distance at an angle from our current course. It surprised us all, especially myself. I have been a resident to the town of Burkittsville for the better part of 20 years, and, with the exception of certain old wives' tales, there have been no accounts of anyone taking up residence this far out in the woods. We turned slightly to head toward the smoke. We traversed 3 hours through ancient oak trees. I remember thinking the sound of the wind through the tree leaves sounded not unlike the whispering of an old woman. And then I realized that I did not feel any wind upon my face. I was about to comment on the strange phenomenon of the wind to the other men when I spotted the cabin. The home was a small structure in ill repair. The smoke we had seen lingered in a haze around the house, though we could not see its source. We went closer to inspect it, which required us to navigate a very short stretch of hill terrain. Our sight I don't know what that word is, of the house was, sight line. Our sight line of the house was interrupted by one of these hills, and when we managed to crest the hill itself and regain what should have been a direct sight line, the structure was gone. We searched the entire area, but not a single one of us could find any trace of the cabin again. The stream of smoke remained in the sky directly above where the cabin should have been. Mr. Johnson insisted that the sighting of the cabin and the smoke must have been no more than a trick of our own minds, experienced by many men due to our desperation, though I took a small delight in not being the only man glimpsing some sort of phenomena. I could not help but think enviously of Thomas Gillard sitting in the safety of his home. Ugh. March 17th, 1886. 2 members of our party vanished during our search. The first was Mr. Robertson, who seemingly disappeared into thin air half an hour after we crossed into the wood. Some other men turned to call for him, I do not recall who, and then that calling intensified to a frenzy, and soon the whole search party was running about searching for him. Some suggested he must have turned around and headed home, as Mr. Gillard had, but a moment later we set eyes upon a small bundle of sticks, bound with a set of slime-covered boot laces. Gross! Mr. Michaels disappeared shortly after. He volunteered to head back to town to see if he could find Mr. Robertson. As it turns out, he never completed his journey. When the remaining 11 of us returned at the end of a fruitless day, it was to the screaming and hysteria of the town. Apparently, sometime during our excursion, someone had placed small wooden effigies in the shapes of men on the doorsteps of Mr. Robertson and Michael's homes. Though I do not know either of these men well, I am deeply affected by their strange and sudden loss. Mr. Gillard made the right decision when he chose to stay out of these woods. No freaking joke. March 18th. Last night I dreamt that I was alone in the woods in the dead of night. As I stumbled around in the wood in the dark, I noticed two lights in the distance. They hovered among the trees for a long moment before being snuffed out, leaving me totally alone once again. I cannot help but believe them to be the souls of Robertson and Michaels, but inside that labyrinthine wood. Or perhaps they were a pair of eyes. Ooh, creepy. I awoke this morning covered in sweat with two small pinpricks upon the back of my neck. No. They continuously bled, no matter the amount of pressure that I placed upon them. I tell myself again and again that it must be nothing other than a spot where I had pricked myself upon a thorn or branch during yesterday's search. Yeah, tell yourself that. After summoning all of my remaining courage, I joined the search party once again. We numbered 5 in total today, as half the remaining men have refused to join us again. I don't blame them. I'm surprised you went back again. Okay. About 3 hours into the day, Mr. Johnson claimed to have caught sight of a boot print. My hopes were momentarily lifted, and I ran to see his discovery. However, I tripped on the way over and hit my mouth on a rock that lay on the forest floor, biting my tongue as I fell. Ouch. My mouth filled with blood, which soon began to dribble out onto my clothing. I soon realized that the rock had knocked one of my front teeth out of my mouth, although I couldn't find it anywhere on the forest floor. Perhaps I swallowed it in my confusion and pain. To add insult to injury, it soon became apparent that there had been no boot print on the ground after all. The men did what they could to aid me, but we decided to call the day's search shot, as we deemed it unwise to separate and allow me to return to town alone. We returned minutes before sunset, although there should have been, by all account, hours of daylight remaining. March 22nd, 1886. I have waited several days to collect myself, and I feel as though it is time that I recount what our party discovered on the 7th day of our search. We did indeed find the missing men from the first search party, but it was in no condition any man should be found. I would not wish the violence that was inflicted upon these men upon my worst enemy. We discovered them by the same large white rock we saw on our very first day of scouring the woods. They were long dead and had been butchered like animals, all laid out upon the rock in some unnatural formation that I can only assume be some form of satanic glyph, as it matches the symbols drawn onto their bodies in intermingled blood. Ugh! The authorities have arranged a search for a madman or men and posted guards on the road to town. The guards are to remain there at all hours, but something tells me the perpetrators will elude their grasp. Something tells me they cannot be grasped at all. Oh, creepy, creepy, creepy. That was in the movie. I remember that. Oh, okay. So, now we have a play called The Execution of the Blair Witch, written by Anthony. Okay. This script is a section of a historical play that I staged a few years ago titled The Past Never Dies, a first-person anthology of tales from old Blair. This particular scene is a dramatization of the Honorable Judge Jonathan Goodneighbor's journal entries, written just a few months before his death in 1785. Goodneighbor's journal was originally found in the walls of the museum during HUD's renovations. A rat had made its nest out of the pages, but the few sections that were still legible have provided a fascinating insight into the trial and condemnation of the alleged Blair Witch. While the lack of concrete information regarding the accused witch death, those particular pages having been long since lost, forced me to take a number of creative liberties and make some educated guesses. All the information on the directions that Goodneighbor took in the force itself are accurate to history. Okay. Interesting. Act 1, Scene 5. Okay. Judge Goodneighbor's quarters, afternoon. Goodneighbor paces the floor of his bedroom and crosses to his desk. Sitting, he prepares his journal and writes. Writing weary. This is the journal of Jonathan Goodneighbor, recorded this horrid evening, February 17th, 1785. The townsfolk complained of witchcraft. Many children bear the same mark on their wrists from where she carved and siphoned blood. It was told to me that she collected the blood into several small bowls and arranged them in her cellar into some satanic symbol. I, being a godly man, as well as a man of the law, ordered an investigation to be conducted at once. An hour's walk into the forest, we discovered the old woman's home, encircled with fencing of wood bound in twine. Rushing inside to the fruit cellar, we found her standing in the corner as if expecting our arrival. I saw no sign of the ritual and no evidence of her working her craft. It made no difference. She had ample time to conceal her doings, and the children's testimony was damning enough. We bound the hag in shackles and carried her to meet justice. Goodneighbor leans back in his chair, deep in thought. He stands, crossing to the window to stare out at the town. Goodneighbor, aloud and foreboding. We must put this witch on trial and submit her to the punishment with utmost haste. Blackout. Okay, Judge Goodneighbor's quarters, night. Goodneighbor angrily storms into the room. It is dimly lit by a single candle. A storm rages outside the window. His desk is cluttered with books. He sweeps his arm across the tabletop, throwing the mess to the floor. He sits and furiously writes. February 21st, 1785. Though the children of Blair exposed her deeds, the old woman had nothing to say on the matter. Even when I bellowed at her in the most thunderous voice to reveal her true purpose, she said nothing. Finally, I was left with no option but to take a hot poker to her skin. Yeah, that's great. Torture prisoners to get answers. That's the American way, right? A reminder of the everlasting hellfire which awaits all those who refuse to repent. She did not so much as flinch. No mortal could have withstood the searing pain of that fire, and so it was proven in her silence that she was indeed wed to the devil. The trial was complete. The windows blow open, extinguishing Goodneighbor's candle. The stage is dark. Damned storm! A flash of lightning briefly illuminates the room, revealing an old woman watching Goodneighbor as he closes the window. He doesn't seem to notice her. The room returns to darkness, and when Goodneighbor relights the candle, she's gone. He continues. As I delivered the sentence, I expected some cry or protestation, and yet she sat staring at the wall with unfocused eyes. Come the morning, my companions and I shall bring the witch to a quiet place to carry out her sentencing. With a heavy sigh, Goodneighbor lays down his quill. Blackout. Judge Goodneighbor's quarters, day. Goodneighbor appears exhausted. He has heavy red scratches on the left side of his face and neck. His robes are torn and his boots are muddy. Writing. February 22nd, 1785. And so the courts have done their work, and the law has been upheld. Desiring to place distance between ourselves and the fair town, we traveled until we came upon a huge bone-white rock. I suggested that we complete the deed there, as it seemed as good a spot as any. However, we soon began to hear a terrible noise, the sound of hundreds of crows calling in the distance. I judged the birds to be an hour from our position at the rock, but the cries echoed in a most loud and ominous manner, doubtless an omen. As they crowed in the distance, we pummeled the witch as punishment for summoning the beasts. Still she made no sound. That's great. Yeah, oh, there's birds cawing. Let's beat her up. The rationale. Though the witch was silent, the forest was not. The sound of cawing crows still echoed from a particular region of the forest itself, as if the land had taken on the cries of the bird and amplified them 100-fold. As the others clutched their ears in pain and fear, I found myself clutching at my greatest comfort, a locket containing a lock of my dear wife Propriety's hair, to compose myself as I recited the Lord's Prayer. The fact that it's like 1785 and the wife's name is Propriety, like, come on, old-timey people. Unwilling to remain in the same vicinity as the beasts, we turned from our position at the rock and fled for 5 hours in total, going the opposite direction from which the cacophonous cawing had so ominously emanated. While we fled the noise, we noted that a certain region of the forest contained a number of trees that appeared to have been ravaged by a large creature of some sort, and I warned my men to keep their wits about them. I was quite relieved when we left this particular area behind us. Our group continued straight forward on the course we had set from the terrible noise. When the last sounds of the crows had faded and the forest was silent as the grave, save for the sounds of our party's footsteps, the witch finally broke her days-long silence. She requested that, were she to be left to die, she would be left in a grove of trees that she often sat amongst in moments of silent contemplation. We, being an honorable and compassionate group of men, right, they had just been beating the crap out of her. Compassionate group of men. Come on. Obliged. She turned at a slight angle and led us in a new direction, with myself directly at her back, keeping a keen eye out for any sign of treachery, and my men behind me. As we walked, I began to hear behind me my men murmur dreadful utterances about how we and our children would be doomed for our trespassing and our violence. I turned and ordered them to be quiet, but each and every man insisted that they had not uttered a word. After traveling for 2 hours in the witch's chosen direction, we came upon a hollow with a white tree at its center. I moved to bind the witch to the tree, a twisted, dying thing. Seeking out one final opportunity to sate her bloodlust, the witch clawed at my face and neck as I bound her, screeching all manner of hellish condemnation and tearing the locket from my neck. It was then that my companions fled, leaving me to carry out the deed on my own. Perhaps they feared she would soon break free of her bindings, and so I was left alone to complete the task. Her strength surprised me, but the power of all that is holy remained on my side, and I succeeded in my efforts to subdue her. I completed the deed, and so, full of fear that I momentarily forgot about the locket, turned my back on the witch to return home. As I left the hollow, I began to feel an agonizing sensation of burning on the back of my neck, as if 2 hot coals had been pressed into my very flesh. I did not turn around to see what was behind me. Instead, I began to run back to town, not slowing or turning back once for the entire journey. Regretfully, I must leave my beloved locket behind. A fear grips me that should I attempt to return to the forest again, I might not return home. From outside the window, the figure of an old woman in a dark, heavy cloak slowly approaches, watching Good Neighbor. Good Neighbor writing, I comfort myself with the knowledge that the witch's twisted heart will lie far away from civilized society forevermore. Still, I confess that I cannot forget the sound of her final cries and the terrible curse she uttered with her last gasping breath. But I comfort myself with the knowledge that, at last, this horridness is behind us. The old woman stands staring in through the window, no longer at Judge Good Neighbor, but at the audience. Ooh, creepy. I like it. Okay, so they were originally going to kill her at the rock that all the other weird stuff happens at. Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, and then this is the map of the area. Okay, so first of all, we need to check this for any hidden clues. because I feel like that is a common denominator here. Not seeing anything though. Anything on the back? No. Okay. So here we have the compass. And on the back is etched each square an hour. So each square on this map is an hour of walking, I would say. And then we have a magnifying glass, which is good because there's some little tiny things written all over the place. So let's whip this bad boy out. How do I look? Okay. So no hidden messages there. Okay. Try not to block the camera. Sorry. Okay. The crown with its dreadful murmurs will cradle careless travelers for eternity. Creepy. What is this? The heavy hands of trees are seared with claw marks and carvings. That must be where Carver likes to hide out. Here the vermin foster in the bleak sunlight, but the dance under the light of the moon. Okay, here the vermin foster in the bleak sunlight, but dance under the light of the moon. Crazy. Okay. The crows feed at blood red dusk. That's also creepy. Okay. There's so many weird little things written down here. This cartographer probably lost his damn mind. I'm just saying. Okay. I hear something. It's like right in the fold. Hold on. I hear something. The oak trees and leap into the air, but I will not give in. I can't make out what it is. It's like dark print on like a dark green. Okay, here I saw the eyeless creatures hoard their bones. That's creepy. Eyeless creatures hoarding bones. Forks of lightning erupt from the clear sky. Okay. Also not normal. Tears of the drowned ceaselessly flow down the creek. That's right by the big white rock. Underground ancient roots wind through scattered skulls. Also creepy. Okay. Though the sun moves through the sky, the shadows of the pines stay fixed in place. Okay, now I know there was something about shadows, and he built his home away from the shadows. So it's got to be away from there. Lost souls weep from nostalgia and regret. Okay. Ooh, here's another one. Okay. The sky shines bright under the sun, and moon are nowhere to be seen. Okay. So, I'm going to say, here's Burkittsville. Everyone seemed to be going to the Rock, and then from there going somewhere else. And he said he made his home far away from where the shadows don't move, which is all the way over here. So I'm going to say his home is over here somewhere. What is this one? Oh, forks of lightning erupt from the clear sky. Okay. Here I saw the eyeless creatures hoard their bones. Interesting. Okay. So I still say that his home's going to be over here somewhere, but it doesn't make sense because, like, no one said anything about a railway track, and there's a track from the old timber mill. And the rock is all the way over here. I'm so confused. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to, first of all, look at what that coding was, and then I'm going to try and make some sense of this map. But I do think it's going to be somewhere on the eastern part of the map, just from what the accounts of the hermit was building his house, because I'm pretty sure the hermit is Carver. Let's see. What did it say exactly? So I know there was something about shadows. It was like the last note that was like the last straw, and the guy was like, I'm not going back there. Okay. We started on the path to the lumber mill, but soon veered off from the path entirely. We walked in one direction for what I would judge to be 5 hours. As we walked to, the hermit would occasionally mutter under his breath, like he'd forgot himself completely, blah, 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 blah. We reached a stream, and when he did, it was like he suddenly remembered I existed again. He turned to me and started talking about how there's a part of the forest where she pinned the shadows in place with pine needles, and that he made sure to build his place as far away from them as he could. He said that his cabin was another 3 hours down the river away from the still shadows. He told me that I should count myself lucky that I wouldn't have to see these shadows just yet. Okay. So they started on the path to the lumber mill. Okay, I might solve this. But I still will look up what that coding was. Anyone that has actually watched this live this far, you're the realist, because we're almost at like an hour. Okay, so they walked along the path to the mill, which is here, and the town is over here. Y'all can't see, but okay, here we go. Let me try and get this in frame. So, here's the town of Burkittsville over here. This is the path to the lumber mill. They walked it for 5 miles, he said, right? We started on the path of the lumber mill, but soon veered off from the path entirely. We walked in one direction for what I would judge to be 5 hours. He said something about heading toward the hoard of bones. Okay. So where was it that the vermin hid their bones? Okay, here I saw the eyeless creatures hoard their bones. Okay. So they started on the path and then veered off. So I'm going to guess it's like here. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they hit a stream, which holds up with where that is. Okay. So we've got where they like hit the stream. Got that far. Okay. There's a place where the shadows are pinned. And he built his place as far away from them as he could. His cabin was another 3 hours down the river, away from the still shadows. Okay. So then I'm going to say the coordinates are Q7. There's nothing on the map there, but that's got to be it. They headed downriver. Okay. Well, I'm going to message that in and see if I'm right, and then I will also look up what that coded message was for the letter that he left her, being an absolute a-hole. And then I will do a follow-up video for you guys and let you know if we were right or not and what the coded message said. This has been a lot, and I'm sorry for the coughing, but at least I felt good enough to do a live finally, right? Okay, I will probably have this up tomorrow, okay? Hope you guys enjoy!